So, oh, geez. I thought this would be closer, but it's not. All right, so I'm going to come up here. In 1899, the Board of Education votes to open correspondence with Andrew Carnegie. And Judge Cranmer should be a name that those of you who are local historians recognize. I have to get the piece that I can read here. It's too fuzzy up there. Judge Cranmer offered a resolution, and this was at a Board of Education meeting, providing for the appointment of a committee of 3 to open correspondence with Andrew Carnegie for the purpose of ascertaining if an appropriation can be secured for a public library building in Wheeling, with the understanding that the Board of Education will annually appropriate a sum of money sufficient for the proper maintenance and conduct of the library. Now, and Dr. Javersak's article, he knows about this, we've had this discussion. He quotes information from one of the Ruther's book that Andrew Carnegie wanted to put a library in Wheeling. Andrew Carnegie didn't care where the libraries went, and after the first couple rounds of people asking him personally for money, he turned it over all to his secretary. So it's not true, and this is actually proof that it's not true that the board initiated, again, the Board of Education, here we are, the Board of Education initiated the conversation. So, oh, you're not looking at that. This is actually a letter, and I won't read through all of it, but this is a letter from Nelson C. Hubbard. The Hubbards should be a name that people in Wheeling history recognize. He was on the Board of Education, an attorney in Wheeling. It was written either July or August of 1899. And I just wanted to read a couple paragraphs here. And he's making the case, and it's to Andrew Carnegie, he's making the case for Wheeling needing a library, but also concerned that Carnegie may compare Pittsburgh's need to Wheeling's need. Wheeling's wealth is so small compared to that of Pittsburgh, and so much of it is locked up in the hands of those who are not ready yet to appreciate our need of a good library. That I am at a loss to know what you would consider a fair comparison with Pittsburgh's appropriation and a suitable provision to be made by this city. But he closes the letter by saying, a small group of citizens here are impressed with the city's backwardness and with the serious need for such improvement as a good library guarantees. They are willing to give energy as well as time to the gradual building up of the community, and whether or not you may finally consider it wise to give financial help, they would receive with pleasure any suggestions coming from you as to municipal improvement. So, there were very few instances where Carnegie got involved. Supposedly, the urban myth I've heard rolling around, you know, there's a Carnegie Hall down in Lewisburg. And supposedly, Andrew Carnegie was on the golf course one day with the mayor of Lewisburg and turned to him and said, would you like a library for Lewisburg? And he said, no, we'd like to have a concert hall instead. And so that's how Lewisburg claims they are the second Carnegie Hall in the United States. Those of you who have been to Lewisburg are still thriving, very welcome there. All right. No one's dropped out of their seat yet, which is a good sign. Okay, so what happened? Carnegie offered $75,000 in 1899 for a library building in Wheeling. And it was the original caveat that the local community, actually originally they said the local community had to make an annual contribution of $5,000, but then in 1909 they changed that requirement to 10% maintenance, which would have been here $7,500. So you had to agree that every year you would maintain it minimally at $7,500, where you wouldn't get money from it. Very smart, he caught on very early that if you put these libraries out there but are not sure about how they are going to be maintained and funded, that may have a problem for the future. Same story right now. Right, Dottie Thomas, I see you there in the back. Local funding is still the same issue in West Virginia now that it was back then. So, in 1901, the state legislature passed a law so that Wheeling could get the money to procure a site and to levy a tax to pay for maintaining the library. But it required a bond issue. It required an election from the citizens. And so over the next 3 years, there was a back and forth negotiating with Carnegie's people. Generally, it wasn't anything serious. They were just clarifying. Often people wanted the Carnegie people to provide them with architectural plans, with other, and generally they didn't do that. They would sometimes look at people's architectural plans and say, no, wait a minute, we don't need a alcove that memorializes Andrew Carnegie. This is just a waste of money. So, they would do that, but generally. So over the next 3 years, there's going back and forth with people, Carnegie's. And then, in 1903, Carnegie's secretary says, the offer's still there, guys. If you wanted to meet our conditions, the money is still there. So the Board of Education said, well, okay, we'll do this, but we're not going to commit any money to it. Sounds familiar again, since the 21st century. So the city council, at a very contentious meeting, there are some newspaper articles that you can take a look at, passed a resolution to support the project, but there was one member who proposed a separate resolution. It was John J. Conley. And I will read this one because it says, whereas Andrew Carnegie, a citizen of the United States and a resident of Scotland, has offered a donation of $50,000 to the city of Wheeling for the purpose of erecting a library, with conditions attached whereby he hopes to perpetuate the name of Andrew Carnegie at the expense of the taxpayers of the city of Wheeling. And whereas the citizens of Wheeling are willing and able to provide for their educational wants, therefore be it resolved that the city of Wheeling do hereby reject the offer of Andrew Carnegie to donate $50,000 for the purpose of erecting a library. We recommend to Mr. Carnegie give his proposed $50,000 to the widows and orphans created by him on the banks of the Long Hill on the morning of July the 6th, 1892. Of course, he was referring to the Homestead strike and the massacres and the deaths and the bloody result that happened there. Remember, Wheeling, at that time, labor was strong in Wheeling. Labor was very strong in Wheeling, and they did not like this a bit. So, the High Valley Trades and Labor Assembly said they didn't want a monument to Carnegie. And they were advising their members not to vote for it. God forbid that one of my children should ever bring home a book from a Carnegie library. So both sides, you have the people in favor of this, you have the people who are opposed to it, waged a very public campaign. The Board of Education is very important in trying to promote this, and it all builds up to the election. Citizens voted on the library levy on January 16, 1904, the middle of winter and a flood in Wheeling, which did bode well for those who were hoping. So the flood, even though the flood was there, the voters did come out to the polls. It did not receive the necessary majority. It was defeated, and so it made Wheeling the only city in West Virginia at that time to defeat by a library levy to get Carnegie dollars. It won everywhere but in the working class neighborhoods. And when you look at the research that was done here in this book, Carnegie Denied, they seemed to be a little surprised, but I think after they analyzed, they discovered that by and large, the labor classes were not in favor of libraries. Because of two things. One, they didn't want to pay the additional taxes, and two, they were working like dogs day and night. They didn't have time for libraries. They didn't have time. You can talk about them going to the library and get a book and bring it home to read, and they're like, shh.